Welcome to the Playing with Purpose podcast from the New York Video Game Critics Circle. I'm your host, Ryan O'Callahan, and with me today is NYVGCC senior intern and writer of the Roundup over on nygamecritics.com, Ronald Gordon. Ronald, welcome. How's it going?
Pretty good. Great to be here. Great to see everybody. I'm here ready to talk about games and the VGA, hopefully.
Awesome. Yeah, excited to have you. Anything you're playing recently? I know there's a lot of good stuff coming out these days.
I have just jumped headfirst into Destiny 2 with the final shape coming out. I'm very excited to dive into that. And I spent an entire day and a sleepless night grinding to get used to the controls and used to everything inside Destiny 2. So that final shape is good and ready to go for me.
You are much braver than I am. Anytime I try to get into anything that has like an anthology like that, I just know that I will get sucked in and then I will lose this job because I will not have any more free time. But very nice. I'm excited to hear how all that goes for you, and especially with the new expansion coming. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we jump in with our guest. At the time of recording, it hasn't happened yet, but by the time you hear this, we will just have wrapped up our contribution to this year's Minecraft Battle of the Boroughs. Alongside the New York City Build Competition, the Critics Circle ran the Minecraft Writing Challenge, where high school students across New York City could submit their narrative for a game that they want to build within Minecraft. Congrats again to our winners, Mary Ellis Ryan from Baruch College Campus High School, and our three additional winners from John Dewey High School, Jalen Finch, Rehan Ali, and Nahil Rashid. Be sure to follow NYVGCC on Twitter and Instagram for any and all updates. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for this very podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening. And catch up on our previous episodes with Abubakar Salim, the creator of Tales of Kinsara Zhao, and the actor on the upcoming season 2 of House of the Dragon, and Ben Starr from Final Fantasy XVI. And if you want to support the work that we are doing, you can make a donation over at nygamecritics.com/donate, but we will have more on that later. With us today is the founder of the NYC-based gaming collective, Video Game Amateurs, Brandon Henriquez. Brandon, welcome. Great to have you.
Ryan, thank you for having me. Ronald, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited.
Absolutely. It's been so long since we actually had like an elongated conversation. I think it was my first Game Awards before I was even working with the Circle. We had a really awesome, I think like half-hour talk in the lobby.
Just chopping it up.
Yeah,
that was such a good time, and it's so cool to come full circle, right? Because that was actually our first one as well. Myself and the team being there, and so we shared a couple of firsts that one, and then now a couple of years later, now we're chatting on the podcast.
Absolutely. So to dive in, I want to know a little bit about what is your gaming history. I feel like this is part of what we were talking about over a couple of drinks that first time, but where did gaming in your life start for you?
Oh man. So shout to my mother, because she is the one who has brought gaming into my life. She actually had me very young. She had me when she was 16, so she was very much so still a young teen herself, and I just got lucky enough to have the gamer mom. Right? So even though technically my first system was a Game Boy, right? She had a Nintendo in the house. Which begrudgingly she shares the story of me waking up in the middle of the night looking for a bathroom and only finding the living room and a Nintendo on the ground, where I proceeded to I guess handle business, right? But I would say at that day and age, right, that's where systems were made a little bit differently, because the Nintendo still ran after it was all cleaned up, right? You blew the cartridge through, right? A little bit of Clorox and stuff, kind of cleaned everything out, and games were still being had. And I think that's really where it started for me. My mother always had games in the household. She used to work late nights, so that was kind of my, hey, you have to stay indoors. My mother's still Hispanic, sick, so I'm not allowed outside after certain times. But at the very least, she would, get me any kind of games that I want, right? Like we were lucky enough to, be blessed to just have a little bit of extra income where she would, give me the opportunity to experience so many great games. I was a big Nintendo fanboy when I was younger. So I didn't have a PlayStation. I didn't have a Dreamcast. I didn't have a Game Gear. Didn't have anything else. Didn't have Genesis, right? I was all Nintendo up until I think GameCube era. And that's where, coming around high school is when I really started to meet a lot of my close friends who I still have to this day. I was born and raised in Westchester, out in New Rochelle, shouts to Neuro. And I think that's where, as I was allowed to be outside a little bit more, I would start to invite my friends over and say, hey, let's come play some games, right? And around that time, that's like, I start to go over my other friends' houses where they have, PlayStation 2, they have Xbox, got my first run at Halo, which kind of changed my life in a whole nother spectrum. And also got really into the fighting game community as well during that time. And, I'm just honored and thankful that, she gave me an opportunity to really explore that passion, which now I've been able to start a business on.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's not often that, you're definitely able to do those things with family. A lot of times it's very much like, you're hanging out with your siblings, your parents telling you go to bed and, cut it out with the games. But that sounds awesome. Very nice.
Oh yeah, man. My mother actually taught me how to play Mortal Kombat, funny enough. So she's the one who definitely not only I think trained me in the skill, but also got me competitive, right? Because she's hyper competitive herself. She's played basketball. She's actually also got me into bowling. She's bowled in the league a couple of times. So now even with our friends, we go bowling fairly often. But she's super competitive. And as we know, especially in the gaming community, it can get quite competitive as well. And so she kind of rooted me into that since I was younger. And it's been great because one of her favorite games is actually Galaga. So there's a story, right? That her water broke apparently in an arcade. And so she used to play Galaga. So now whenever I'm at a location that has Galaga, I make it my best effort to make a top 3 high score. I put her name on it, take a picture, right? Tag my mom on IG. I'm like, this one's for you, Glow. And keep it moving from there.
That's awesome. Galaga is my brother's favorite arcade game of all time. And for his 30th birthday, that's when Arcade 1-Up had just launched, and it was their first machine that they made. So I threw him a 30th birthday that was all arcade centric, and I had bought him that machine, so we were all playing him, and he absolutely demolished us. But now I want to see you absolutely destroy his scores, because
we might have to have the verses. Yeah, you just got to know the routes, man. Right? It's all pattern based. Yeah. So once you know where to shoot, can hit the challenges properly, you can I consistently get top 5 on my first or second run. So I'm kind of nice. I know enough now.
Well, I was thrown when I learned you want to get tractor beamed so you can get the double ship.
Oh yeah, yep.
Never knew that was a thing. I was like, oh no, I'm losing. I've just been tractor beamed. And he's like, no, this is a great opportunity.
You have to do that first round. That's the best round to do it. Because if you get that first round, then you're ready to rock and roll, right? You can clear up to the first challenge stage fairly easily without any deaths and perfect scores. So that's definitely a skill. But I've flubbed that up more than a couple times because you also have to kill it at a specific time too. And if you're not aiming properly, you can hit the second ship, and then essentially that run is done, right? So you kind of gets a little technical. But I love simple games like that. I love how technical simple games can be, right? I know a lot more so than often these days, a lot of people complain about Soulsborne games, Elden Ring, right? Difficulties and such, right? But you weren't with us when we were trying to play Aladdin on Super Nintendo, all right? You've never tried Earthworm Jim ever in your life, or one of the hardest games I've ever played, right? I think I gave that up when I was younger, all right? Maximum Carnage, okay, right? And these were unforgivable, right? You lose your credits, you're done. There's no save, there's no, you start back at stage 1 and you got to run back through the whole game, right? And those are games I think I've still yet to complete. I've never even tried to go back to those, right? When meanwhile, Elden Ring, right? I think we have people beating them with goldfish, right? Yep. Have you ever seen that video? Like someone like put like a map on their fish on the tank, and then like wherever the fish is on the tank, it reads the button placement. And a goldfish has literally beaten Elden Ring, right? So I'm a big proponent on that games were harder way back when, because I don't think a goldfish can beat Aladdin.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me insecure that a goldfish can achieve more in gaming than me, because Elden Ring is impossible. I cannot get past the first boss.
Honestly, the first boss is like one of those bosses you're just not supposed to go play. You're supposed to like play the game for like 20 hours and then go for the first boss, right? It's not something where you need to like run through. It's like made to explore. And honestly, Elden Ring helped train me for the other like Dark Souls games thereafter. I can rant about it, but it's obviously because the DLC is coming soon. So my anticipation is very subtly growing more and more. I'd actually deleted it for a bit, but I re-downloaded it, started getting the hands ready for it again, because I know I'm going to die multiple hundreds of times. But I just need to get the right feel for it.
So one of the things that I'm kind of hearing about your journey in games is that a lot of it has to do with the competitive nature and playing against others. Is that something that's still true to today, when you focus on what makes a game good for you?
Ooh, 1,000%. I love multiplayer games. Specifically, I'm a big proponent of fighting games, right? Like I used to take part in a lot of FGC tournaments back in the heyday of Street Fighter 4, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, even steadily into Dragon Ball Fighters. And honestly, that's how I got a lot of my friend groups when I was younger. Because, when you're younger, it's like, hey, I'm nice at this game. Well, you're nice at this game. Well, let's play. And some of my very close long-term and long-time friends, like over 20 years, all stem from competitive gaming, right? From when Smash Bros. First released on 64, into Soul Calibur, right? That's actually where my tag comes from. My tag is Soul Brandon, because back in my heyday, Soul Calibur 2 was my game on the PlayStation, Xbox, on the GameCube, even at the arcade. So we're at the Neuro arcade. I actually had like the top score on there. And then Soul Calibur 2, they actually had like the ghost data in that game. So like people would be like, oh, like who's this guy Zero? And it was me all along. That's actually how I wind up learning how to play Dance Dance, because not enough people would want to play me in Soul Calibur. So Dance Dance was like right across from it. But I think that's also where I learned a lot about myself, right? Like where I feel currently in the gaming community, right? That competitiveness gets mixed with a lot of toxicity, right? And I'll be first to admit, when I'm like 15, 16, right? Like, that's easily, I think, blended into that scene and into that mix. And it didn't take until I got older where I'm like really considering, well, is this how I want to treat my actual friends, right? Is this how I want to treat people I'm just meeting, right? Like, is this that, is this ego talking, right? Or is this us having fun, right? Like, and me trying to share something that I'm enjoying with other people who enjoy it, right? And that's where I think for me, that competitiveness, which also brought me a lot of friends, brought me a lot of good times, brought me a lot of or people I consider family. It also taught me like, hey, there's a limit to that, right? Like, and there is a boundary where you also don't get to decide on, right? There's a boundary of that other people have on what they're willing to accept and what they're willing to be okay with, that you also have to adhere to and understand.
Yeah, I mean that it's interesting. Like I know what you're talking about, like with that level of just like toxicity that's like expected,
yeah.
Or at least I think when we were younger, like you talk trash while you play, and to a point, like how much does that actually, how much of that is actually fun? I remember with my college roommate, I had brought my GameCube and we were like playing Smash, and like we would play together, and he would just get like real angry and would just like talk a lot of trash. And like I knew I wasn't good. I'm just here for some fun. And like at one point, I just like put the controller down. I was like, we don't need to play this again.
Yeah. It's like, we're good.
Yeah. But then, like, from that point, he was like, oh, he's like, that's not fun for you? I was like, no, why would it be fun? And, like, now we're still super close, and he doesn't curse at me while we play games, which is really nice.
Right. It's funny because I think it's just one of those things where, especially when you get really excited and you're like, yeah, like, even in the FGC now, like, oh yeah, we got the pop off, right? Like, and I think once again, I think everything just has a limit to it, right? But even now, I've kind of separated that, right? Like even when people challenge me, because even though as video game amateurs, right, as our name, people try to perceive it as, oh, that means we could be noobs or something like that, right? Where really we've kind of taken that term and twisted it into what it actually means, right? And an amateur really means, comes from the root of the word, which is amateur, which means to do something for the love of it, right? Because you love it, because you enjoy it, right? And that's where we're rooted in. That's where I'm rooted in. So when people come at me now, I'm like, hey, I'm very fun loving. I'm very chill. I'm like, okay, well, if you want to challenge me, I want to let you know, you're going to talk to somebody else, right? You're going to talk to the game side. You're going to talk to SB, right? And when he comes for, we have something in VGA we call Las Manos, the hands, right? Like the hands are talking. It's not me. I'm a vessel. I'm a vessel for Las Manos, right? And they came to do the work, all right? So I just need you to understand the work that they are coming to do once you challenge me.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to also like in the classes that we do, and I think Ronald, you are part of a lot of these conversations too. Is the way that toxicity has kind of evolved over time now with the internet being so much more prevalent, and we've had conversations with kids as young as 10 to 12 who are just part of this vitriol because they're trying to like play Roblox, which is like. That's not even a competitive game. Like, right? The sense of, if you're looking at something like screaming at someone while playing Street Fighter, it's an interesting thing to kind of see that, evolve over time and how it's gotten worse. And in some cases, maybe better. I'm hoping that, we're making those changes.
Yeah, here and there, right? Like I think one, I think publishers and game devs have tried to curb it, right? Like, and the end result is that it's something that has become a cycle at this point, right? Like us who used to do it circa 20 years ago, right? Like some of us grew from it, right? And grown away from it and understand it. And then some people haven't, right? Like, and because of that same mix or group of people get involved with the newer people, right? And then now that cycle continues because now it's being made to seem as if it's okay, as if there's not another person behind the screen, behind the mic that I'm talking to, that I'm interacting with, right? That you would have no idea how this is actually impacting them, right? Like I think one of my favorite memes, especially for older gamers, it's like, me after a 10-hour day finally coming to play Street Fighter, right, for a couple hours just to get my mind off things. And then it's like the 18-year-old who has been playing for 8 hours all day who now gets a perfect on me and proceeds to degrade me and belittle me thereafter. Right? Like, and it's, it's just one of those things where I think the competitive edge, or I guess that dopamine feel that comes from winning, right? That comes from being better, right? Immediately coincides with that toxicity of like, I'm better than you. And so I should be able to talk to you however I want to. And what we try to do. So we've been doing like esports coaching at schools. We've been trying to say like, hey, for instance, while we understand where you're coming from, right? No one's actually better than anyone, right? Like we're all coming into the space to enjoy something together. All right. And if it's not an enjoyable experience for all of us, then what is the point of experiencing this together at all? Right. And it's like, if you like multiplayer games, right, then do you want to wind up just playing by yourself? I don't think so, right? Because eventually, take it like the little kids, right? If you're the mean kid, no one wants to come play with you, right? And so, I think that's one of those things that it takes some of us being the older ones that have to teach the younger generation to say like, hey, listen, these are the reasons why it's not okay, right? It may seem fun now, it may seem not as harmful now, but in the long run, right? Like you have to understand that this is still a representation of you. And if people see you as being this negative, toxic individual, that's going to catch up to you at some point, right? And we see that a lot, even with some top pro gamers who eventually that bad rep, follows them along the line, and then we have different types of situations with them, right? So I'm hoping that it continues to get better, and at least I've seen a lot of devs and publishers try to work on that in their end as well.
So one thing I wonder too when we're talking about, I guess both toxicity and then, what makes a good game and worth your time. So obviously with, VGA, you guys are very involved with streaming and doing things on that end. What to you is the difference between like a good game in general and then a game that's good for streaming?
Ooh, that's such a good question, right? Because streaming is its own animal, and I tell people this all the time, right? Like anyone can stream. Anyone can stream. You can stream anything that you decide to do, right? Like there's people who stream just being outside, right? Like there's people who stream making food. There's so many great different activities that you could stream, right? However, you need to consider what your end goal is when you're taking on this task, right? Because listen, I could stream all the games that I love all day, right? Like I love Hades 2, which I've been playing a lot of early access stuff. I actually love a lot of gacha games that I play on my phone and also on my computer, right? So I used to play Genshin a lot. Well, I now play Honkai Star Rail, right? Shouts to Hoyoverse, right? I've recently got on Wuthering Waves. I can't pronounce it properly, but Wuwa, which is like the new Genshin Impact clone, right? But I also know what the community of that looks like, right? I know a lot of the prominent gacha game streamers and YouTubers, right? And I know, well, for sure, I'll get a couple of views on that. No one really cares watching me try to pull a 5-star character so much, right? But you know what? When I throw on a fighting game and they see me interacting with people, they see me get perfects or lose really badly, people love that part of it, right? Like, and people love watching that part of it, right? Like, and so I think one big consideration is just understanding the audience that is trying to watch the content that you want to put out there, right? Because while I think some of the gacha games are really good, while I think, other sidebar things that I also play, like Marvel Snap, I love Marvel Snap. I love card games. I love TCGs, right? I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Since way back in the day with my TI-83 in the library, right? But am I the right streamer for that? Probably not, right? Like, are people really going to watch me play Marvel Snap and get like 8 cube wins all day? Most likely not, right? Like, but people are going to want to see that Shoryuken from Akuma as soon as he drops. 1,000%. They know I'm going to come in. I'm going to talk some mess, right? I'm going to get hyped. I'm going to wave the hands. I have 2 Infinity Gauntlets that sometimes I break out. I put a robe on, right? Like at the end of the day, it's entertainment, right? I treat it like it's wrestling, right? Like when I got to go up to entertainment mode, it's time to do that. But I like also taking a load off too. The re-released Paper Mario 1,000 Year Door came out. I love Gold. I love this game. All right. I think I played it the whole weekend last weekend, right? Like, and just headed it out. And excuse me, not last weekend prior. And that's, while I'm sure there's certain people that would love to see Paper Mario in general, people don't come to watch me play Paper Mario, right? I'm not the Paper Mario guy, right? And so coming again, right? Like I love a wide array of different genres, right? I do, except for sports games. I'm not a sports game guy. I'm sorry, all my Madden, 2K, NHL, MLB people, FIFA people. I love y'all. But I'm not a sports person in general, right? Like I don't watch sports, so it makes sense. I don't watch the sports. I'm not going to play the sports game. Right? But like every other game, I'm all for. I used to be a fan. I used to love, which is why I'm also a big proponent of Game Pass, right? And PlayStation Plus and all these other services where you get free games every month. Because I think Xbox Arcade, they used to have like a summer arcade that they used to do. I think this is still back in 360. I think it was before the one. That's how I played Castle Crashers for the first time. And I remember me and my friends played that for a whole summer after. I was like, wait, have you tried this game? Right? You got to play this. Or Luminous, which I used to call Lumines a lot. another amazing puzzle game, right? That we used to like head out, right? Like I love just experiencing new games because one, there's so many great, talented people that are working on them. Two, you never know what you're gonna like until you try it, right? So I love to give at least one game a couple hours just to see if I'm feeling it. And three, if you're paying a subscription service and you get a game for free, you might as well, if you got a little bit of free time, see if you might like something new.
Yeah, I think you're totally right too. With just as far as the the streamer side of things, is there's something about your personality being baked into what you're actually playing, and it surprises me a lot of times of like what I'm now watching, which is like I never was someone who would watch someone else play a game because my mentality is like if it's a game, I'll just play it.
Yeah,
Why do I
just play.
But now I like catch myself and like my fiance will wake up and be like, what is wrong with you? Like, I think I'm on like episode 30 of like a guy building things in, I'm now forgetting the name of it, but it's like the theme park maker. Like,
like Roller Coaster Tycoon or one of those, right? Like our theme park tycoon.
Like one, and I'm forgetting what it's called, and which is ridiculous because I've now watched 30 episodes of this man just
you're locked in.
Park. But it's fascinating how like depending on who you are, like you can pull in an audience and just doing something really simple. Ronald, I guess my question for you then, because I definitely want to get you on the mic. If you were to stream, what do you think is like perfect for you that you could captivate an audience in? Maybe it's something you're really good at, or just like aligns with your personality.
What I were to stream, you see, part of me, bleeding into that conversation you had about like the content you watch, part of me wants to do just outrageously niche topics, because one of the things I never thought I would start watching is like the 7, 8, 10 hour introspective lore videos on games and like the deeper parts of like the story of Elden Ring or the story of Armored Core is one I literally just watched like a 4-hour video on the entirety of Armored Core lore.
Armored Core is so good. I love mech games.
Is amazing. But like I'd love to do content like that where it's the niche topics of like this part of the game. One of the things, because I actually thought about this a while ago of like starting a podcast with friends, one of the things that I would love to talk about is the fact that Spanish is a language that exists in Monster Hunter. Like it's spoken, one of the characters, even if you have the English dialogue, says like Buenos tardes, and there being Spanish means that there are other countries of origin within the Monster Hunter world similar to ours, like Spain, like Africa, like all these other places, because other languages are referenced. So it's like, what sort of world does Monster Hunter have in its deeper lore that it's not just Monster Hunter language, if you change it up and things like that. So I'd love to do little niche topics of did you know, because the did you know videos are the ones that always suck me into the 9-hour scrolls of TikToks and YouTube shorts and all those things of did you know this part of a game exists, or did you know that this exists within this world? So just chasing niche topics like that, because I feel like there's so many games out there, but there's not a lot of information on the world of the games out there. Like there's so many Call of Duties, but the deeper lore of Call of Duty, where is that? Like that's
right.
That's fair. Yeah, I've definitely been sucked into rabbit holes of that, especially if it's like every so often, if I'm going on a long car ride, I'll go into Spotify in the podcast section and just type one of my favorite games and be like, has anyone else just provided commentary? Like the amount of times I've listened to people talk about Final Fantasy X is disgusting. Like, do I need to hear people talk about it again? Probably not. But will I? Like, absolutely.
Right? Do I really want to know how did Sin start? Yes, maybe. Right?
There are hundreds of theories.
10 is one of the greats. I'm one of the people who my top is actually 8.
You and Ben Starr would get along very well.
Oh man, 8 was everything for me. 8 was actually the first Final Fantasy that I like 100%ed actually. Like got every GF. I completed the whole triple triad game, right? Like I did everything in that game. There was no more I could do, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I love that game.
Yeah, I hopped in on 9 and then kind of rode that train up until present. It was really hard to go backwards. Because of the fidelity of the games, and like, when you're in like your mid 20s and you've never played Final Fantasy VII, it's like, do I really want to walk around with a guy with balloon arms? Like,
right?
But then we
looking
looked
like
out
a mega block.
we got the new one. Exactly.
And then the remakes draw you in.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I still haven't played through any of the remakes because I've still been trying to finish off 16. And then when I was about to beat it, they dropped DLC. And I was like, come on, why? I was right there.
Yeah. I just started the 16 DLC. And then, like you said before, I fell into Thousand Year Door remake.
Yep. I can only do so many RPGs at a time, right? Like I can't balance too many, right? Which, speaking of, I really feel like 16 just needs a theatrical release. They just need to make 16 a movie, probably a multi-part movie, right? Because of how crazy it is. But gold, like I think storyline wise, 16, one of the best I've ever played.
You give me an emotional story about brothers, and I'm instantly always in. Like, I think that's my Achilles heel.
You know what? I didn't think about it that way, but I think me too, because that's how I got locked in on Full Metal Alchemist as well.
That's entirely fair.
And yeah, like so I think you might be onto something with that. I might have to actually like look at my own lore on how many brother storylines do I actually love and enjoy.
All right. So we are going to take a really quick break just to cut to a commercial. When we come back, we will be talking more with Brandon about the video game amateurs and all the exciting events that they are doing here in NYC. So we will be right back. The Playing with Purpose podcast is brought to you by the New York Video Game Critics Circle. The New York Video Game Critics Circle is a nonprofit organization that brings comprehensive games journalism and games narrative classes direct to schools in underserved communities across New York City. Students are given unique opportunities like writing game reviews for nygamecritics.com, creating games with Twine, and conducting interviews with gamers and game industry icons like this very episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to go to nygamecritics.com to learn more, and head on over to nygamecritics.com/donate to donate to this incredible cause. And now, back to the show. So welcome back to the Playing with Purpose podcast. We are here with Brandon Henriquez, the founder of the NYC-based gaming collective Video Game Amateurs.
Yes.
Hola, we back at it.
So, Brandon, every company starts from humble beginnings. So where is the Video Game Amateurs humble beginning? Because as you said, amateur means doing something with love. So how do you all come together to play the games you love and things like that? Where did it start?
So as you've heard me talk about a lot of competitive endeavors, right? It mostly started with competition, right? So before VGA, I was running a virtual reality, augmented reality creative studio called Pretend Labs. So I was working on a lot of different projects there. I'd actually built out a whole green room studio in my apartment uptown in Harlem. Actually, it was in Sugar Hill at the time, and I was watching E3. And they had just announced Dragon Ball Fighters. And to learn all this stuff, so I at that point I was doing VR for maybe roughly around 3 years, and I had to actually drop gaming for a little bit of my time because I was learning so many different new skills. I was learning, game development. I'm learning 3D design. I'm learning 360 capture. I'm learning a whole bunch of different things, but Dragon Ball Fighters was announced. And Dragon Ball Fighters was practically the game I was waiting for all my life, right? Like it is Dragon Ball Z mixed with Marvel vs. Capcom. That's what I needed. That's what I loved. That's what I enjoyed. That's what I had to have, right? So at the time, I was also an IT manager for a charter school in the Heights as well. And so a couple of my friends, I went up to them. I was like, hey, you guys see this? I was like, we got to play this. I was like, but I can't just play games anymore because they take a lot of time. So, if I have all this equipment, let's at least stream it, right? And so my friends at the office were down. So my friends Alex and Damien, big shouts to both of them. And so Dragon Ball Fighters released, and I'll never forget we're at my in-home studio, right? And we're on Twitch about to create an account. And I'm like, all right, what are we going to call ourselves? Right. So we're sitting there and they're like, oh, we should be the professionals. Right. Like, and we're just joking around and stuff. And I'm like, all right, realistically, we are nowhere near professional. Right. And we're never going to be. I was like, but what's the opposite of that? Right. And then we found amateurs, right? And there was a little bit of, I think discernment between all of us and saying, I don't know if we should call ourselves amateurs. As a lot of people say, is this going to be like noobish, or like, are we going to be seen as not serious or anything like that? And I'm like, well, let's dig a little bit deeper. And that's where we come to find that there's nothing really in between an amateur or a professional, right? Like, and there's no really like, as far as we've been able to find, right, nothing that really actually ties these together other than the difference of, in terms of definition, being paid for it, right? Like as a professional, the only like difference between an amateur is like, oh, well, it's because you're getting paid for it, right? Like that's what makes you a professional. Whereas amateur, it's like your base root is because you love this thing, right? Like, and because you love it, you do it and you enjoy it and you go with that. And so from there, I got my two friends to agree. I'm like, all right, we're going to call ourselves video game amateurs. Even though I've worked in tech, so I have a background in tech now 16 years running. I've worked on Photoshop. Obviously I was doing virtual reality stuff. I know all this technology. Still proceeded to make our first logo in Microsoft Paint. Just because it was really, it was really not like taking it seriously, right? Like this was not anything, or in my wildest dreams would be where we are now. And so from there, step forward in time a little bit. Dragon Ball FighterZ released. We would stream it, whenever they'd come over and we'd have a little bit of time. Very irregular schedule. And then Smash Bros. Ultimate was going to release. And I've had a very good relationship with some of the gaming stores throughout the 5 boroughs where, I'm not naming any names, but I can usually get games a little bit early. And so, I'm like, hey, I hit up a couple friends. I'm like, listen, we can get Smash Bros. A little early. Why don't we do a tournament at the studio and we'll stream it and everything else like that? Cool. So we invited some people. We had roughly around like 20 some odd people all come over. And we live stream our first tournament before the game like actually dropped. And had everyone play. And a friend of ours, well, now friend, but at that time I did not know him. I didn't even know how he wound up at my house. But our friend Ed, or our friend now Ed, came in and he sweeped all of us in Ultimate, right? Sweeped all of us with Cloud, and then proceeded to not only win our money, but then bought us pizza with our money. Right? And I took so much offense to that I made him one of my good friends. And comes to all of our events now. We had a good time. But from that, and just from the general appeal of just, being able to bring everybody together in person and while also streaming and have fun, we had a couple of our other friends, say like, hey, I'd love to help out with this. So shouts to Ivan, shouts to Luigi, who have also been co-founders of VGA, and say like, hey, we'd love to add to this. I'd love to stream this. Like Luigi said, hey, I'd love to stream like just old school games, just retro games. Ivan said, his moniker is the Pokemon Don, so he wants to play all the Pokemon games. He plays Pokemon Unite religiously and such, right? And it became very much so a smaller community at that time, but a community effort for what that started with. And finally, at the end of 2019, I think it was, we had our first in-person event. We were like, you know what, we're going to do a Smash Bros. Event, right? Because at that point I was holding lobbies. I was delivering Las Manos, as we like to call them, fairly religiously. And so we're like, cool, we're going to do a 48-person tournament. This was right around when OS NYC just like opened not too long ago. I think they opened roughly, when was this? I think they must have opened like September, and we threw our event in November. Big shouts to OS downtown. Check them out. And so, so we threw a 48-person tournament, $1,000 pot. We had our team come in, DJ it, and we were like, all right, well, let's see what happens, right? We had Johnny Numbers come through, who was like a world ranker in Smash Bros. Didn't even know at the time, right? Like this is like also, while we've been gamers and been in the gaming community, we haven't like, I want to say we don't know everybody, right? And I think that's one thing that I really love about the gaming community is like you really never know how deep everyone is in it, right? Like whether they are a podcaster, right? Like I first met Danny Pena at a Stream NYC event in OS NYC. I think that was a month before we threw our Smash tournament. I had no idea who he was, right? And we're just kicking it with him. We're like, hey, also Aaron Simon, right? Like just a bunch of like really dope individuals that we're just kind of kicking it with. I'm like, all right, you guys are cool. Like, yeah, we're VGA. We stream sometimes, right? Like, and we're just kicking it. And they showed us a lot of love. And then I think the moment where we started to kind of differentiate ourselves was that first event, because as I mentioned, we had a lot of like really good players, some people who came from House of 3K who throw weekly tournaments as well. I'll never forget, they came up to us, they're like, hey, can we lower the music? Because as I mentioned, we had DJs at our event. Can we lower the music for the tournament? Because we want to be competitive and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, I get it, guys. I was like, but this is how we do things, right? Like, and how we do things is very much so like, if you're coming over to my house to play some games and kick it, right? We're going to have some music playing. There's probably some food. People are talking and kicking it over there, right? And then we're playing games. And that's really what it's all about. It's like, hey, we want to bring that experience of all of us getting together, of doing this thing that we enjoy. And while it's not necessarily the most perfect competitive environment, it's very much so like, hey, we're just coming to come kick it for a little bit. And that's kind of how we started and took it from there.
Quick question to jump in on you, just because I got to know before we get past the Smash Ultimate. So you're throwing these tournaments. Obviously, it seems like Smash is still a big part of what you guys are doing. Who is Brandon maining?
Oh, Gannon, or Swagendorf, as I like to call him. Yeah. So I do play a couple of other different characters too, right? So I also bring up Jigglypuff. I got Wolf. I got Chrom. I got Fox, Young Link. I also made Steve Harvey as a me character. So sometimes I got to bring out the Harv, right?
Now, is he fighter, swordsman, gunner?
Oh yeah, he's a fighter. Okay. The Harv is a fighter, right? But it's usually Ganondorf, right? Like that's who I come out with, and people are usually shocked by my choice. But you know, I gotta throw the Swagendorf hands. And you could feel that power. It's really the Spartan kick for me. Anyone who has a Spartan kick, that's usually what I'm going for.
Yeah, we my fiance and I both love Smash. He's a lot better than I am. I'm complete garbage. We went to a local tournament and like we were like, oh, you're gonna do great. And he plays as Zelda, and someone came out with a Ganon, and I was like, oh, he's got this. Absolutely destroyed him like in seconds, and I was like, we are not as good as we thought.
Oh man, that is the realization that I feel like we all get at some point. It's like, yeah, we're really good with our small circle, right? As soon as you step out of there, you're like, oh, okay,
I see what you mean. This track, but if I step out into the marathon, I'm bad.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's like that all the time, man. And I think that's where we also excel in, right? Because especially in New York, there's so many competitive circuits, which shouts to all of them, right? Like whether it's Smash, Street Fighter, right? Tekken, right? Shouts to NYC Tekken, which we partnered with earlier this year. You know, there's so many competitive circuits, but where I think we found a lot of success is the way I love to put it. There's people's grandmas playing Candy Crush, all right, on Facebook, all right. And if you take that into consideration, there's so many more gamers that are casual than there are that are competitive or take it, let's say, as seriously as we do, right? But there's no real like middle ground for them to hang with those same people who take it so seriously, right? Yeah. And so just like at that tournament, we say, no, we're gonna also like keep playing the music, but we can get you some headphones if you want to go super in, right? Like try to be accommodating as possible. We're very much so like, no, like our lane is like, listen, the same way when we're at our friend's house and they're yelling in our ears, the same way you're gonna have to get this dub as well, because that's how we get it.
So then how do you go from you're hosting your first Smash tournament 2019 to now you've got your Power Up Festival, you've got a branded beer, which I want to know everything about. Like that must be incredible success. Look at that. So how do you get there?
Oh man. You know, it is, I'm going to sound cliche, right? Like, but it's one of those things where opportunity meets like work ethic, right? I think a lot of people sometimes think that it's like luck, right? Like when people have successful endeavors or get granted great opportunities. And I feel like there's always opportunities out there, right? Like, but you have to be ready to step up. and be willing and ready to do the work, right? Like, especially when you're trying to run, a brand. I think one of the things that I'm very thankful for with my team is that we always understood that no singular individual is the brand, right? Like, and everything, that we do is additive. So like usually with the team, I usually say I only got two rules, right? Like, number one is be flexible, right? And number two, everything is additive, right? And you can only add things if you're flexible. And so with that, I honestly, want to say the pandemic, I think, helped us leverage the skills that we already had as individuals, and help showcase them on a level that a lot of people were not able to do at the time when the pandemic hit. So as I mentioned earlier, with having a strong tech background, we also were one of the main streamers within our Uptown clique, right, or community. And so there's a big party. Shouts to the homies House 78, but they throw a big event called 9 a.m. Banger. And I think one of their founders actually works at Presbyterian. And so when the pandemic first hit, it, obviously was hitting hospitals hard. It was hitting everybody hard. And so that what they wanted to do was hold a fundraiser for Presbyterian Hospital. And so they approached me with also the Hallucinated team. Shouts to Steve, Alex, Miguel, and Jackie, and also David. They do a lot of like the VJing and other things within the community. They basically want to do like a 13-hour event, 13 DJs from everywhere, and have everyone stream through like one central channel. We're talking before Zoom parties, before everything else like that, right? So they contacted me. I wind up building our own stream servers for that event. And so with that allowed me to tell DJ 1, DJ 2, you stream to server A, you stream to server B. I can then pull the feeds. We, export it from here into one main feed on their channel while I had VJs connected into the setup, right? Like we did a whole shebang, wind up raising, I think, close to like $14,000 for Presbyterian, which was amazing, right? And once again, big shouts to them for putting that initiative forward. But from there, I was like, hey, well, if we just did this for them, we can kind of do this for us, right? And so throughout the midst of the pandemic, what we started doing was large digital events where we would bring in guest streamers internationally, guest DJs internationally, hold panels, hold tournaments, all throughout our channel, make it kind of like a whole all-day show, right? And so we did that almost quarterly throughout 2020, 2021, into us being able to do our first event outdoors, right? We actually met Bronx Brewery through another opportunity. Big shouts to Dana Lou, one of my big DJ friends and producer friends, who's really, really, really amazing. She's also a heavy hitter. She had a partnered beer with them at the time and wanted me to live stream it on site. And this was when things were just starting to open up. So I said, yeah, for sure. We handled the event. It was great. But now that I was there at Bronx Brewery, I had opportunity to talk with them. I'm like, hey, I'd love to also do events here, right? Like there's not a lot of outdoor gaming events going on, right? I'm like, we have a lot of equipment. We'll bring it out there and just kind of have some fun. And so that took us through 2022, where then they offered an opportunity to us to have our first like beer. It was draft only. We called it Select Start. And I was actually super hyped about that. I was like, yes, like we got something cool. Let's do it. And so I'll never forget this. And this is where like I started coining something a little bit different that we say, because, similarly it's being amateurs and doing things for the love of it, right? Like we kind of do things at our own capacity and what we can do, right? So it's not like we have the tens of thousands of followers, right? It's not like we are always engaging in every post, right? It's not like I'm posting 24/7, right? But what I can say is that what we do with intent, and we do with impact, right? And so this is where I started to say things like we're all about impact over influence, right? Like because when we had our first beer called Select Start, I'll never forget there was another large influencer. There's like a couples influencer team, right? Who with over 6 million followers had released a beer with Bronx Brewery 2 weeks prior to us at the East Village location. And they didn't sell out a beer, but they had a great event. And so I'm talking to the GM and I'm like, hey, how can I make sure that every person in our community is going to be able to try our beer, right? That was the one thing I wanted to do. I'm like, we're going to be there for like 8 hours. I just want to make sure that everyone who comes for us is able to try it. I'm like, can we do wristbands? Can I do tickets? What makes sense? And I'll never forget the GM said, listen, don't worry about it. Big influencer, millions of followers. They didn't sell out. You guys will be fine, right? It'll be cool. I was like, okay, great. We sold out, I think, 2 hours before close. And I looked at him and I was like, listen, man, our community shows out because we try to do for our community as much as possible, right? Because not only do we do the events, that majority of our events have been free. We also have been partnering with a network called HITN, where we've been doing esports coaching programs in schools. So we've been doing that since 2020. We brought that 6 schools in Chicago, all digitally. And then now we work with 5 schools, 1 in each borough, which we actually just last week held their big Battle of the Borough tournament, right? That was also in Smash Bros. Luigi, aka Stash, hosted it. We held all the game tournament systems down. We hosted it at their studio in Brooklyn. The kids loved it. These were kids that we've been working with all year. So it was a great time, right? But when we do that, and then also we come back and then do things for the other rest of the community, right? We're like, hey, like, yeah, we want to help our kids grow and help them enjoy a passion that they love. But then also, let's go and enjoy the things that we love together, right? So after that first beer, Bronx Brewery put us on their community collaborative series called Y Series, right? And so that's where we had worked on naming it Power Up. We worked with David Rodriguez. His tag is Vicio. He's also DJ'd a bunch of our events. We spent a month practically on this can design. Wanted it very retro. This is also like our colors, right? We have like the purple and pink within our like main color scheme. And we were like, hey, we're one of the first and only NYC gaming brands to have a beer. Let's go and really, really show out. And I'm like, how can we do this, right? And being Uptown folks, right, we love nostalgia factors. We love old school hip hop. And so we wind up having an opportunity to get Joel Santana perform last year. So we had a free event, had I think 6 major DJs, some of them being on our team. But we had like the likes of Max Glazer, who runs Federation Sound, and has also been like Rihanna's DJ, Sean Paul's DJ, like really, really, really great individual, like really all about the community as well. We had DJ AQ, we had Yo Q, who's Pusha T's DJ, Hoskin DJ, Cash Games Only. We had a sick lineup, in my opinion, right? And then Joel Santana came to perform, and imagine it's all for free, right? So we did that out of free from our pockets, and like, hey, just come celebrate this honor of having a beer, right? Because I would have never thought in our right mind, right? And then circle a year later, I'm like, well, how do we top bringing out Joel Santana to an event, right? Like, because we had close to like 800 people attend last year, right? Like, we like shut the brewery down. It was one of their best sales date ever that year. And so I was like, all right, well, I want to do a festival, right? And I've said this within our team. This is now our 5th year of doing VGA. I was like, one of these things is going to happen first, right? Either we're going to do a convention, we're going to do a regional tournament, or we're going to do a festival, right? Like this is our like 3 pathways of alignment. And so I'm just very thankful enough that 1, my team is down to do crazy things, right? And then 2, right, I'm down to have a community that believes in us, or excuse me, I'm thankful that we have a community that believes in us, and that we have partners like Bronx Brewery that also believe in us. And so we closed down a block outside of the brewery. We had 2 stages. This year we recently just started working with Red Bull on a couple projects. So we did a Tekken Invitational at NYC Tekken that we held at OSNYC. We actually rented out a gaming truck and had them compete on the gaming truck, and then brought them from Brooklyn to Manhattan to then top 8 actually compete at OS. And then since there, we were like, hey, it'd be cool if you could host the second stage, right, for our DJs. So we had that actually out on the 135th Street. And they actually also had a hosted bar that was actually the Yellow Power Up mixed with Yellow Red Bull mixed with Power Up, and we called it Star Power. And it was actually really good too. And it went off without a hitch. Like, we had a bunch of vendors throughout the community, right? We tend to do that with all our events because we like supporting local. We like supporting great creative individuals as well that also align with us, and that's been working for us going like at all of our events, and that was great. We also had a lot of great sponsorships. Shouts to Branson Cognac. Shouts to and Mike's Hot Honey was there, which was so weird to me. We had like a 85-foot obstacle course. We had laser tag that was outdoors, which a lot of people enjoyed. And then shouts to Dynamic Focus, who actually came through and hosted all of our tournaments. So we streamed tournaments inside. So we did Smash Bros, we did Tekken, we did Street Fighter, we even did Mario Kart. And then one other thing that we started to bring in, which shouts to our Project New Type team, is we started to bring in like Gunpla model kits, right? Like, so obviously it's a lot of Gundam ones, right? So we actually met their team from me just streaming, building model kits, right? So we were talking about like different things you could stream. One day I was like, I don't feel like playing games. And so I got 10 Gundams that I've not built in my house. And so today I'm just going to spend 4 hours building a Gundam, right? And then a friend of a friend put us onto that group. And then I was like, hey, we'd love to bring you to our events, because guess what? Like, also, as we've been growing as a video game brand, there's so many different things that are adjacent to us that we also love and enjoy. Like, we love anime, right? Like, we love also doing model kits. I love music. I love this. I love that. And so I always say, like, our first customer or community member is ourselves, right? Like, what are the things that I like and enjoy? And similarly, people who like gaming, some of them are very introverted, right? But would like to be in a social setting, right? So how do we bridge that gap? Well, hey, what if I gave you a cool activity to do that you can get something of pop culture, right? Because Gunpla, they make model kits for Star Wars, ships, cars, right? Pokemon, anything. You can find something you're gonna like, right? And you can just kind of hang and be in a social environment, but not necessarily have to engage with everyone, right? And I'll never forget the first event that we did with them. No one did any Gunpla, right? Like, no one did any model kits or anything. And I looked at them, I was like, trust me, just keep coming, right? And then by like our last one, they would be selling out of all their model kits right before the day even starts, right? So I think that just is a testament to, one, understanding what we like, understanding what the community is enjoying, and not being afraid to try new things, which, like our festival, we just got finished planning for 2025, or starting the planning for 2025. And would like to even see maybe, New York Video Game Critics Circle might even want a table, right? Like, maybe even live podcasts, planning with podcasting with a purpose, right? Playing with a purpose.
Yeah. So we're almost at an hour, and I want to be, courteous of your time. But I just wanted to mention before we wrapped up, at the start, I had said, how we were involved with Minecraft Battle of the Burrows, which at the time of recording has not yet happened, but by the time this releases, it will. But VGA is hosting Battle of the Burrows.
Second year in a row, man. Second year in a row. It's, once again, it's crazy to even say that we're hosting the mayor's office Battle of Boroughs, right? I honestly can't wait. I'm super excited for all the schools that are going to be competing, right? Like, I think one thing that we even started off with, like, saying, and one reason why we've started getting more involved with the schools is that the same way we enjoy and love these things, and the same way we found community in the things we enjoy, we want to bring full circle with the next generation that's going to be coming, right? And one of the things, even with our esports like coaching program that we're outreaching to different teachers to help build out more of that curriculum, to bring in that digital literacy, to bring up, more awareness of bullying online, right? And also building out these other skill sets, right? Like trying to get Adobe on board for the video editing, graphic design, trying to get Spotify involved for like the broadcasting journalism portion, right? To kind of build these skill sets around the idea and the passion of gaming, right? Because at the end of the day, right, being a pro player is cool, right? But similarly, as we built a brand around not being pros, anyone can do it and find a lane for themselves. And so I'm really happy to see that the city has taken this initiative with Minecraft to, obviously bring forward the idea like, hey, we're going to utilize Minecraft to build like a green city initiative that's led by the students that live in the city, right? Like, so I'm super stoked and excited, and congrats to the winner. I think Staten Island. I remember Staten Island won last year, and I forget who. I think it was Staten Island and Queens. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Brooklyn. Yes. Thank you.
Well, yeah. And the same team's in it again from Brooklyn.
It's gonna be a clincher. It's gonna be a clincher. But yeah, I can't wait. Big shouts to Stash again, because listen, one thing I love about my teammate, he can talk. So he's gonna host that event to the top of his capability. So I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it in person this year. Ronald, you got to go last year, right?
Yeah, last year it was super exciting. whole lot of energy, a whole lot of initiative given to by the students. One of the Bronx school, actually, TAPCO, was their coach was an old geometry teacher of mine, Steve Spera. He's a pretty cool guy, and it was great to see him again. Especially his students were super energetic. He gave them like a whole lot of coaching, a whole lot of energy, and it was great to see. Even though they didn't win, they still walked away like we'll win eventually. That whole
right.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got to help for this year. I got to judge the Brooklyn semifinal. So I got to see like in the room, like the elementary school division blew my mind. Like they walked in there with like a vision. There was like one team where I was like, this child will be the mayor in the future. Like he knows how to rally people around him. It was a very, very cool experience. I can't wait to see how they wrap it up.
Yeah, they get so focused.
I'm excited to see the elementary schoolers because we didn't have them last year, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what the winners from each borough of the elementary schools are coming with, right? Because that just blows my mind that we even have elementary schoolers, right? Like coming to like do a whole build sesh to compete in it. It's like I'm super stoked.
Yeah, no, they like could build circles around anything. Like we were 30 seconds into they just got a prompt, and I'm like, you have like 3 walls built on a structure. How on earth do you do this? It was very
I couldn't
cool.
build for my life in Minecraft, so like that's a whole different skill set that my hands are not ready for.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we are at an hour, and I definitely want to be courteous of everyone's time. So Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time. Where can our good listeners find you online if they're looking for you, want to know what's going on with VGA?
Yeah, Ronald and Ryan, thank you so much for having me once again. You can find us at VG Amateurs. That's VGAMATEURS at every social possible. So that's IG, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, right? Like, well, LinkedIn and Facebook use the full name Video Game Amateurs. But yeah, you can find us there. We are actually planning for the next events coming up for the rest of the year. I think I'm actually doing this shortly hereafter. But we usually do an end of summer event with Bronx Brewery, so you can catch us there. It's also open to all ages, right? Like, so we've had the babies at our events, literally at Bronx Brewery. So come kick it with us whenever you get a chance. And just thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely want to try to come through. I've wanted to go to the festival since we met last time, but it always happens to fall on like a weekend where I have like a wedding or something for my upcoming wedding. So I'll be excited to find a time when I can actually show up.
Oh yeah, for sure. The end of summer is going to be cool. And then next year's festival, we're gonna be blowing it out the park, right? Like if we're starting planning this early, sky's the limit, right? Like so, can't wait to have you. And yeah, thank you guys so much.
Awesome. And for the New York Video Game Critics Circle, you can follow us at NYVGCC across socials for any and all updates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast wherever it is that you are listening. And of course, if you want to donate to the great nonprofit work that we do in schools across New York City, please head on over to nygamecritics.com/donate. And with that, thank you all for listening. Until next time, I've been Ryan O'Callahan with our co-host, Ronald Gordon. Have a great day, everybody.